Sure, but you're going to be the one stuck with those 5 kids. I'm taking the house, Daniel said, his voice dripping with a smugness that sent shivers down my spine. His words were a slap in the face, a stark reminder of how far we had drifted from the love that once seemed unbreakable. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. You think this is just about the house, Daniel? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. What else is there, Laura? You'll crawl back eventually. You need me. That was Daniel, arrogant, dismissive, and utterly blind to the wreckage of our family that lay at his feet. Our journey together, which had begun with laughter and dreams in the corridors of college, had twisted into this bitter, unrecognizable end. You've always underestimated me, I said quietly, my mind made up. But not anymore. I'm filing for divorce, Daniel. And I'm taking the kids. His laughter was cruel, a sound that echoed in the empty spaces of our once happy home. Divorce? You think you can manage without me? Go ahead, try. But remember, I'm keeping the house, and without my money, good luck surviving. I looked into his eyes, searching for a trace of the man I had fallen in love with, but all I saw was a stranger, a cold, heartless stranger. I turned away, my heart heavy, but my decision firm. You'll see, Daniel. You'll see what life is like without us, and when you do, don't come looking for me. With those words, I left the room, leaving behind the shattered remains of what was once my life. The kids were still asleep, unaware of the storm that was about to change our lives forever. As I packed a few essentials, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for the 5 beautiful reasons sleeping in their rooms. They deserved a life free from the shadow of their father's indifference and cruelty. I glanced back one last time at the home that had held so many dreams and whispered a goodbye to a past that could never be reclaimed. Stepping out into the crisp morning air, I felt a sense of freedom, tinged with fear and uncertainty. But above all, there was hope. A fragile, flickering hope that from the ashes of our broken family, something new and beautiful could arise. The journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready. Ready to fight, ready to rebuild, and ready to show Daniel that his arrogance would be his downfall. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was the author of my own destiny. The day I met Daniel at college, he was the epitome of charm and wit. His laughter was infectious, and his promises were like a beacon of hope. We were young, in love, and naive enough to believe that love was all we needed. Fast forward to our married life, things started to change slowly yet painfully. The once attentive and caring Daniel became distant, his smiles replaced by frowns, and his warm embraces turned cold. It hit me hardest after the birth of our twins, Ellie and Ethan. I still remember holding them in my arms, their tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and looking up to see Daniel standing at the door, his expression unreadable. "Why won't you hold them?" I asked, my voice a mix of bewilderment and hope. "They are your children, Daniel." He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. I just don't know how to handle them." I tried to understand, to believe that it was just a phase, that soon he would be the doting father I had imagined he would be. But as days turned to months, the distance only grew. When I brought up the idea of having another child, hoping it might bridge the gap between us, his response was lukewarm. "Sure, if that's what you want." But it was never what he wanted, was it? The man who once dreamed of a big, happy family was now a shadow of his former self, buried under excuses and avoidance. Our life became a cycle of unmet expectations and silent dinners. The laughter and love that once filled our home were replaced by a deafening silence, broken only by the children's laughter, a sound that seemed to alienate Daniel even more. "Why don't you spend time with the kids?" I asked one evening, my voice a mere whisper, heavy with unshed tears. He didn't even look up from his phone. "I'm busy, Laura. You know how it is." But I didn't know. I didn't understand how the man I loved could turn his back on his own flesh and blood. How he could retreat into a shell, leaving me to juggle the responsibilities of 5 young lives alone. The more I tried to reach out, the more he pulled away, burying himself in work, and on the rare occasions he was home, he was like a ghost. Present in body, but absent in every way that mattered. As I lay in bed that night, the moon casting a pale light across the room, I realized the painful truth. The Daniel I fell in love with was gone, replaced by a stranger I no longer recognized, a stranger who wore the mask of my husband but whose eyes were void of the warmth and love that had once drawn me to him. I knew then that I had to make a choice, not just for myself, but for Ellie, Ethan, and the triplets. I had to step out of the shadow of a broken marriage and into the light of a new beginning. A beginning where I was strong, independent, and free from the chains of disappointment and unfulfilled promises. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I made a silent vow. I would not let Daniel's indifference break me. I would rise from the ashes of our failed marriage and build a life of happiness and love for my children and myself. A life where we were no longer just surviving, but thriving. Living with Daniel had become like navigating a minefield, each step uncertain and fraught with the risk of emotional detonation. The house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, had become a prison of my frustrations and his indifference. "Mom, why doesn't Daddy play with us?" Ellie's innocent question one evening cut through me. I looked into her curious eyes, her twin brother Ethan nodding along, seeking an answer I didn't have. I knelt down, enveloping them in a hug, trying to shield them from the harsh reality. "Daddy's just very busy, sweethearts. But he loves you very much," I lied, my heart aching with the falsehood. The truth was Daniel had become a stranger not only to me, but to our children as well. His presence at home was like a passing shadow, cold and fleeting. The man who once dreamt of a bustling, joyful household now seemed burdened by the very existence of his own family. Our triplets, barely 2 years old, had quickly learned to rely solely on me. The lack of paternal affection had become their normal, and it pained me to see the void in their young lives. "Daniel, you need to spend time with your children. They hardly know you," I confronted him one night, the words spilling out in a mix of frustration and desperation. He scoffed, flipping through channels on the TV. "What's the point? They have you. Isn't that enough?" His dismissive tone stung, but it was the underlying implication that wounded me deeply. In his eyes, I was just the caretaker, a background fixture in the narrative of his life. The financial strain only added to the growing chasm between us. Daniel's salary was decent, but with his increasing detachment, he became more secretive about our finances. I remember stumbling upon a credit card bill, hidden beneath a pile of papers. The numbers danced before my eyes, countless transactions, none of which were for the family. It was as if Daniel was living a separate life, one where we didn't exist. "Daniel, we need to talk about our finances. The kids' expenses are mounting, and we can't keep up like this," I said one evening, mustering all the courage I had. He barely glanced at me, his eyes glued to his phone. "Why? You managing fine, aren't you? Just cut back on whatever you're wasting money on." His words were like a slap in the face. Wasting money? On what? The children's needs? Food? The basic necessities of life? The more I tried to bridge the gap, the more he retreated into his shell, leaving me alone to bear the weight of our crumbling world. The loneliness was crushing, but it was the helplessness that consumed me. The feeling of being trapped in a loveless marriage, fighting a losing battle for the sake of my children. But amidst the despair, a fire was kindling within me, a fire of defiance, a determination to no longer be a silent sufferer in the narrative Daniel had written for us. I was ready to rewrite our story, one where the children and I were not just mere characters in the background, but the protagonists of our own lives. And as I tucked my children into bed that night, whispering stories of love and hope, I knew the time had come. The time to step out of the shadows and into the light. The time to reclaim our lives from the clutches of a man who had forgotten the meaning of family. The day I decided to break free from Daniel's grasp, I felt a mix of fear and liberation. The morning air was crisp, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere within our home. As I prepared breakfast, Daniel sauntered into the kitchen, his demeanor as cold as ever. "What's this?" he sneered, looking at the simple meal I had put together. "It's breakfast," I replied, my voice calm but firm. He scoffed, pushing the plate away. "This is what I get after working all day? You can't even cook a decent meal?" I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to retaliate. For years, I had tolerated his belittling remarks, his disregard for our family. But not anymore. "Daniel, the kids need new clothes, and the school fees are due. We need to discuss our finances, I ventured, hoping for a rational conversation. He rolled his eyes, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. Your job is to take care of the house and the kids. I do my part. Don't expect more. That was the moment I realized nothing would ever change. Daniel would never see us as his priority. His family was just a burden, an inconvenience in his self-centered world. Later that day, as I watched the children play, their laughter a bittersweet sound, I knew I had to take a stand. For them, for me. Daniel, we need to talk. This can't go on, I said when he finally returned home that evening. He looked at me, a sneer forming on his lips. What now, Laura? Tired of your comfortable life? His words ignited something within me. Comfortable? You call this comfortable? Your children barely know you, and you think throwing money at us is enough? He laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Oh, please, you've had it easy. Don't start playing the victim now. His lack of empathy, his sheer arrogance was staggering. It's not about being a victim, Daniel. It's about our family. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? For a moment, he looked taken aback, as if the idea of anyone challenging him was unthinkable. You think you can manage without me? Go ahead, try, he challenged, his voice laced with contempt. I looked him in the eye, my resolve strengthening. I can, and I will. I'm filing for divorce, Daniel. I refuse to let you drag me and the children down any longer. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual arrogance. Divorce? Fine. But remember, I'm keeping the house, and good luck with the kids on your own. As he walked away, a sense of determination washed over me. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to fight for a better future, for a life where my children and I were more than just afterthoughts in someone else's story. I tucked the children into bed that night, their innocent faces a reminder of the battle ahead. But I was ready to break free from the chains of a loveless marriage and start anew, ready to show Daniel that his neglect and cruelty would be his undoing. The day I started the divorce proceedings, I felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. As I sat in the lawyer's office, outlining the years of neglect and emotional abandonment, the weight of my decision sank in. Mrs. Williams, we'll ensure you get what you deserve in this settlement. Your children's well-being is our priority, the lawyer assured me. I nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. When I informed Daniel about the divorce, his reaction was predictably dismissive. Divorce? You think you can handle everything on your own? This will be amusing. His words no longer hurt me. Instead, they fueled my determination to build a better future for myself and my children. As the legal battle ensued, Daniel's true colors became even more apparent. He was more concerned about his finances and the house than the emotional trauma he had inflicted on our family. You're trying to rob me of everything, Laura. That house is mine. I worked for it, he shouted during one of our mediated sessions. I looked at him, my resolve unwavering. This isn't about the house, Daniel. It's about our children, their future. But you wouldn't understand that. The legal process was draining, both emotionally and financially. But with each passing day, my resolve strengthened. I was fighting for justice, for recognition of the years I had spent in the shadow of a man who valued his ego more than his family. During the final hearing, Daniel's arrogance was on full display. You think you've won, Laura? You'll come crawling back. You can't survive without me. But he was wrong. I had survived, and I would continue to do so. The court's judgment was in my favor, granting me custody of the children and a fair settlement. As I walked out of the courtroom, a sense of liberation washed over me. I had stood up to the man who had tried to diminish my worth, and I had emerged victorious. That evening, as I sat with my children, their laughter filling our modest but warm home, I knew I had made the right decision. We were starting a new chapter, one of hope and new beginnings. Daniel's attempts to intimidate me had failed. He had underestimated my strength, my resilience. And now, he was the one left to grapple with the consequences of his actions. I looked at my children, their faces beaming with happiness, and I knew we would be okay. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The path to liberation had been long and fraught with challenges, but I had walked it with my head held high. And as I put my children to bed that night, I whispered a promise to them and to myself. We would never be victims of Daniel's cruelty again. We were free, and we would thrive. The days following the divorce were a blend of relief and rebuilding. My sister Emily became my rock during this tumultuous time. Moving in with her was a decision born out of necessity, but it blossomed into a period of healing and growth for me and the children. "Laura, you're stronger than you realize," Emily said one evening as we sat in her cozy living room, the kids asleep in the next room. Her words were a balm to my weary soul. "I had to be for the kids," I replied, my voice tinged with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The practical aspects of starting over were daunting. The financial settlement from the divorce was a relief, but it was the emotional scars that were harder to heal. Emily's support was invaluable. She was more than just a sister. She was a mentor, a friend. Daniel's absence became more pronounced in the kids' lives, but we filled the void with love and laughter. Emily's bond with the children grew each day, her natural maternal instinct a comfort to their wounded hearts. I found a job at a local library, a place that offered not just employment, but a sanctuary of sorts. The routine, the sense of purpose, was therapeutic. Slowly, I was reclaiming my identity, no longer just Daniel's wife or the mother of his children, but Laura, strong, independent, and resilient. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Daniel's shadow loomed over our lives in unexpected ways. He tried to worm his way back into our lives, his messages oscillating between apologies and accusations. "You'll regret this, Laura. You and the kids need me," he texted one night, his words a stark reminder of the manipulation I had escaped. I didn't respond. Emily's advice echoed in my mind. "Don't let him back in, Laura. You've come too far." Her words were my anchor, keeping me steady in the face of Daniel's persistent attempts to unsettle me. The children adjusted to our new life with remarkable resilience. Their laughter filled Emily's home, turning it into a haven of hope and new beginnings. We had our moments of struggle, of course, but we faced them together as a family. As the weeks turned into months, I realized the divorce had not just been the end of a painful chapter, but the start of a new narrative. A narrative where I was the author, where my children and I were the main characters, charting a course towards a future filled with possibility. Emily and I would often sit on her porch after the kids were asleep, talking about life, dreams, and the future. In those quiet moments, I found a peace I hadn't known in years. "You've done it, Laura," Emily would say, her eyes shining with pride. "You've built a new life for yourself and the kids." And she was right. Against all odds, we had built something beautiful from the ashes of my broken marriage. We were no longer just surviving, we were thriving. Months had passed since the divorce, and life had settled into a new rhythm. However, the peace was abruptly shattered one evening by an unexpected call from Daniel. I hesitated as I saw his name flash on the screen. Taking a deep breath, I answered, bracing myself for what was to come. "What do you want, Daniel?" His voice was a mix of desperation and arrogance. "Laura, you need to come back. The kids need a father." I couldn't help but scoff. "They have been doing just fine without you." "You're turning them against me," he accused, his voice rising in anger. "No, Daniel, you did that all by yourself," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I've changed, Laura. I realize my mistakes now. Let's start over," he pleaded, but his words rang hollow. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. "Start over? After everything you've done? You're delusional, Daniel." There was a pause on the line, and when he spoke again, his tone had changed. "You'll regret this, Laura. You can't keep me away from my kids forever." I clenched my phone, feeling a mix of anger and determination. "Watch me, Daniel. I will do whatever it takes to protect them from you." The call ended with a click, leaving me shaken but resolute. I knew Daniel's threats were not to be taken lightly, but I was no longer the woman who had tolerated his neglect and abuse. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's attempts to worm his way back into our lives intensified. He tried to sway the children with gifts, to charm Emily with false apologies, but we stood firm. Then came the day when I received a letter from Daniel's lawyer, demanding visitation rights. It was a move I had anticipated, yet it filled me with dread. I met with my lawyer, my resolve unwavering. I won't let him near the kids. He's a toxic influence. "We'll fight this, Laura," my lawyer assured me. "You have a strong case." The ensuing legal battle was draining, but I was fighting for something far more important than my own well-being. I was fighting for my children's future. As I sat in the courtroom listening to Daniel's lawyer paint him as a reformed man, a devoted father, I felt a surge of anger. He was playing the victim, twisting the narrative to suit his agenda. But the evidence was on my side. The years of neglect, the emotional trauma he had inflicted, spoke louder than his empty words. The judge's verdict was a vindication of all we had endured. Daniel's request for visitation was denied, with the judge citing concerns for the children's emotional well-being. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I had stood up to Daniel not just for myself, but for my children. I had shown them the strength of standing up to injustice, to fight for what is right. We were free from Daniel's shadow, finally. The road ahead would have its challenges, but we were ready to face them together. As I tucked the kids into bed that night, I knew we had turned a page. We were no longer bound by the chains of the past. We were moving forward, towards a future filled with hope and promise. And as I turned off the lights, a sense of peace settled over me. We were safe, we were together, and we were home.